You have 5 seconds to leave this room, because someone here already knows how to destroy everything you built. The words did not come from a bodyguard, an informant, or a trusted ally. They came from a young woman standing outside a luxury restaurant, holding a small basket of flowers beneath the glow of Manhattan's evening lights. Lily Carter could not see the man in front of her, but somehow she knew the danger surrounding him. Ethan Walker had spent years becoming the kind of man people whispered about. A Korean-American businessman with a reputation for absolute control, he was known for his calm decisions, his sharp mind, and the impossible distance he kept between himself and everyone around him. Inside the world he ruled, trust was rare and kindness was often mistaken for weakness. Yet on that night, in a room filled with powerful people wearing expensive suits and perfect smiles, the person who noticed something was wrong was the one everyone else ignored. Lily was known on the street as the flower girl who greeted strangers with a gentle voice and remembered every customer by the sound of their footsteps. Many people looked at her and saw only what she could not do. They never noticed the strength behind her patience, the way she listened carefully to every detail around her, or the way she understood emotions through small changes in a person's voice. Ethan had been walking past her for months without truly seeing her. To him, she was simply another person in a crowded city. But Lily had noticed him. She noticed the silence that followed him. She noticed the careful rhythm of his movements. She noticed the tension in the air when he arrived. And that evening, something inside her told her that he needed to hear the truth. When she reached out and gently touched his sleeve, everyone nearby turned to look. Some people exchanged doubtful expressions, wondering why a flower seller was stopping one of the most influential men in the city. Ethan looked down at her with a guarded expression, expecting an explanation that would waste his time. Instead, he heard a quiet voice filled with sincerity. "I do not know your name, and I do not know your world, but I know you should not stay here." For a moment, the noise of the restaurant seemed to disappear. Ethan studied her face, searching for a hidden reason, a request, or a personal gain. He found none, only concern. That was what unsettled him most. In his entire life, people had approached him because they wanted something. But this young woman, who had nothing to gain and every reason to stay silent, had chosen to warn him anyway. Ethan Walker had spent years believing that everyone had a price. That night, a blind flower girl became the first person to make him question everything he believed. And as the city lights reflected across the windows behind them, neither of them understood that this single moment would change the direction of both their lives forever. The next morning, Ethan Walker returned to the same restaurant, but his mind was no longer focused on business. For the first time in years, a single conversation had followed him long after he walked away. He had built his entire life around certainty. Every decision was calculated, every person around him was carefully observed, and every emotion was kept behind a wall that nobody was allowed to cross. Ethan was a man who rarely changed his opinion once it was made. Yet he could not forget the voice of the flower girl who had stopped him beneath the city lights. He had asked his private team to quietly look into her background, not because he wanted to judge her, but because he needed to understand why someone like Lily Carter would risk speaking to someone like him. The information they found surprised him. Lily was 27 years old and had spent most of her life adapting to a world she experienced differently from everyone else. She lived in a small apartment several blocks away, woke up before sunrise, and spent her days arranging flowers near busy sidewalks in downtown Manhattan. She did not have wealth, influence, or powerful connections. She simply worked hard and treated every person she met with kindness. Ethan looked at the report on his desk and noticed something unusual. There were no complaints about her, no hidden motives, and no record of her trying to use people for her own benefit. In Ethan's world, that was almost impossible. Most people who came close to him wanted something: money, opportunities, protection, or recognition. But Lily had offered him something without asking for anything in return. A warning. A simple act of honesty. Later that afternoon, Ethan found himself walking past the street where Lily sold her flowers. The city moved around him with endless noise, taxis passing through crowded intersections, people rushing toward their destinations, and the sounds of daily life filling the air. Then he heard her voice. She was speaking kindly to an elderly customer, carefully choosing flowers based on the person's description of a loved one. Ethan watched from a distance. He noticed how people naturally trusted her. He noticed how she remembered small details about strangers. He noticed how she carried herself with quiet confidence despite the challenges she faced. For the first time, Ethan wondered if strength had nothing to do with power. Lily sensed his presence before he said a word. She turned slightly and smiled. "You came back," she said. Ethan paused. Most people were nervous when they spoke to him, but Lily sounded completely calm. "You knew I would?" he asked. She gently touched the flowers in front of her and replied, "No. I just hoped you would understand that I was trying to help." Her answer stayed with him. There was no fear, no expectation, and no attempt to impress him. Just honesty. Ethan had spent years surrounded by people who saw his reputation before they saw him. But Lily seemed to see something else. She saw a person carrying a heavy burden. And that realization made Ethan more uncomfortable than any threat he had ever faced. Because the woman everyone underestimated had noticed the one thing nobody else had: the loneliness behind the power. Lily Carter had learned many things about the world without ever seeing it the way others did. She learned the difference between a hurried person and a peaceful person by the sound of their footsteps. She learned when someone was smiling by the softness in their voice. She learned that people often revealed the truth through the smallest details they never realized they were showing. Every morning, before the streets of Manhattan became crowded, Lily arranged her flowers carefully beside the sidewalk where she worked. The colorful bouquets were placed in perfect order, each one carrying a different memory for the people who bought them. To strangers passing by, she was simply the young woman selling flowers. Some people spoke to her with kindness, while others looked at her with unnecessary sympathy, assuming her blindness defined her entire life. But Lily never allowed the opinions of strangers to decide her worth. She had built her independence one day at a time. She knew how to navigate the city, how to recognize familiar voices, and how to create a peaceful place for herself in a world that was often too fast to notice her. What most people did not understand was that Lily did not feel incomplete. She had lost her sight, but she had gained a deeper awareness of everything around her. She noticed emotions that others ignored. She felt changes in a room before anyone spoke. She remembered every person who treated her with respect and every person who treated her like she was invisible. The day after Ethan Walker returned to her flower stand, Lily could sense something different about him. He was still the same powerful man with a quiet voice and controlled presence, but there was a change she could feel. He was no longer standing there as someone who expected answers from the world. He was standing there as someone searching for them. "You are different from everyone I have met," Ethan said quietly. Lily smiled as she arranged a bouquet of white roses. Most people say that when they do not understand someone. Ethan looked at her carefully. "And what do you think they misunderstand about you?" Lily paused for a moment before answering. "They think needing help means someone is weak. They think not seeing means not knowing. But everyone has something they cannot see." Her words remained with Ethan long after he left. He had spent years surrounded by people who judged others by appearances, status, and influence. Yet this young woman who owned almost nothing had a confidence that many wealthy people spent their entire lives trying to find. Over the following days, Ethan began noticing the small moments that made Lily who she was. He saw her give flowers to a stranger who looked sad. He saw her remember the name of a customer she had only met once. He saw how people naturally trusted her because she offered something rare in his world: genuine care without expectation. Meanwhile, Lily slowly began understanding the man behind the reputation. She noticed the silence that followed him, the responsibility hidden beneath his calm voice, and the loneliness that surrounded him even when he was never alone. Two people from completely different lives were beginning to understand each other. One had power but carried invisible weight. The other had faced hardship but carried endless warmth. And neither of them realized that their unexpected connection was about to reveal truths that would change everything they believed about trust and courage. For the first time in many years, Ethan Walker found himself distracted by someone who did not want anything from him. His days had always followed a strict pattern. Meetings began at the exact time. Decisions were made with careful calculation. Every person around him had a reason for being there. Some wanted influence, some wanted opportunities, and some wanted to be close to his power. But Lily Carter was different. She stood on a busy Manhattan street with a simple flower stand, offering kindness to strangers without expecting anything in return. That difference stayed in Ethan's mind. Yet as he began learning more about Lily, he also discovered that her quiet life had not been as peaceful as it appeared. Lily had spent years proving that she could stand on her own. She had built routines that allowed her to move confidently through the city, but there were still people who underestimated her. They saw her blindness before they saw her intelligence. They noticed what she lacked instead of recognizing what she carried inside. Ethan saw that injustice more clearly now. Perhaps because he had spent his own life being judged by a different kind of label. To the world, he was only a powerful man with a dangerous reputation. Few people cared about the person behind that image. One evening, Ethan visited Lily's flower stand again. The street was quieter than usual, the golden glow of the setting sun reflecting against the buildings around them. Lily was arranging a group of fresh flowers when she heard his footsteps. "You walk differently when you are worried," she said. Ethan stopped. Her ability to notice things others missed continued to surprise him. "You can tell that?" he asked. Lily smiled softly. "People think seeing is only about eyes. It is not." Ethan looked at the flowers in her hands. "You always find something beautiful in ordinary things." Lily gently touched one of the petals. "Sometimes people do the same. They just need someone to notice." Those words followed Ethan as he returned to his world of business and responsibility. But something else was waiting for him. Information had reached him about unusual movements around his organization. People he trusted were acting differently. Conversations had become more careful. Certain names appeared where they should not have appeared. Ethan immediately recognized the feeling. Something was changing around him. And this time, the person who noticed the warning first was the woman everyone else overlooked. He remembered Lily standing outside the restaurant, her voice calm despite the uncertainty around her. She had sensed something before anyone else. Ethan had spent his entire life believing that awareness came from experience, intelligence, and control. But Lily had shown him another kind of awareness, one built on empathy and attention. Instead of keeping her at a distance, Ethan decided to do something he had never done before. He decided to listen. He invited Lily to a quiet conversation away from the crowded streets. He wanted to understand how she noticed things others missed. But more importantly, he wanted to understand why someone who had faced so many challenges still chose kindness. As the evening continued, Ethan realized that Lily was not someone he needed to protect because she was weak. She was someone he respected because she was strong in ways he had never understood. And somewhere between trust and uncertainty, the connection between them became something neither of them expected. The conversation between Ethan Walker and Lily Carter changed something neither of them expected. Ethan had spent years keeping people at a careful distance, believing that emotions created weaknesses and trust created risks. But every time he spoke with Lily, that belief became harder to maintain. She did not treat him like a powerful figure. She did not measure him by his reputation or the influence attached to his name. She spoke to him as if he was simply a person trying to find his way through a complicated life. That was something Ethan had almost forgotten existed. Over the next several days, Ethan began quietly making sure Lily was safe while she continued her daily routine. He never wanted her to feel like she was being watched or controlled. Instead, he tried to understand her world. He learned the small details that made her life meaningful. He learned how she organized flowers by their textures and scents. He learned how she remembered customers by their voices. He learned that every morning she arrived before sunrise because she enjoyed hearing the city slowly wake up. One afternoon, Ethan found Lily sitting beside her flower stand during a short break. The streets were filled with the sounds of passing cars and conversations from people walking by. "You are always helping others," Ethan said. "Why?" Lily smiled gently. "Because everyone has a story that people do not know." Ethan looked at her quietly. Even people like me? Lily turned toward him. Especially people like you. Her answer surprised him. Most people either feared him or tried to impress him. Nobody had ever suggested that he was someone who needed understanding. For Lily, kindness was not something reserved for certain people. It was something everyone deserved. As Ethan spent more time around her, he began noticing how much courage existed beneath her calm personality. Lily had faced years of challenges, but she never allowed those experiences to make her bitter. She still greeted strangers warmly. She still offered flowers to people having difficult days. She still believed that small acts of care could change someone's entire day. Ethan realized that he had surrounded himself with people who valued strength but rarely showed compassion. Lily represented something completely different. She showed strength through patience, confidence through humility, and courage through kindness. However, Ethan also knew that his world was becoming more complicated. The concerns he had noticed earlier continued to grow. There were unanswered questions within his organization, and he needed to understand who he could truly trust. But this time, he did not want to handle everything by shutting everyone out. For the first time, he wanted another perspective. He wanted Lily's opinion. When he asked her how she recognized danger so easily, she answered honestly, "I listen to what people do not say." Ethan thought about those words carefully. In his world, people often used perfect words to hide imperfect intentions. But Lily paid attention to the small details behind those words. The pauses, the changes in tone, the emotions people tried to hide. Ethan began to understand that Lily's greatest strength was not something she had lost. It was something she had developed. That evening, as the city lights reflected across the streets of Manhattan, Ethan made a decision. He would stop seeing Lily as someone who needed saving. He would see her as someone whose presence had already saved something inside him. The man who once trusted no one had finally found a reason to open the door he had kept closed for years. The days that followed brought a change that even Ethan Walker could not explain. The city still saw him as the same powerful man who controlled every situation with careful decisions and a calm expression. His schedule remained full, his responsibilities remained heavy, and his world remained filled with people who measured everything by influence and success. But behind closed doors, something inside Ethan had shifted. He no longer viewed every unexpected moment as a threat. He no longer believed every person approached him with hidden intentions. Much of that change came from Lily Carter. She had never tried to change him. She never gave him advice or demanded that he become someone else. Instead, she simply showed him another way to understand people. One evening, Ethan invited Lily to a quiet cafe away from the busy streets of Manhattan. He wanted to hear more about her life, not because he was searching for information, but because he genuinely wanted to know the person behind the flower stand. Lily told him about the years she spent learning how to live independently. She explained that losing her sight changed many things, but it also taught her patience, awareness, and gratitude. "People often think my world became smaller," Lily said softly. "But sometimes losing one thing helps you notice everything else." Ethan listened carefully. Those words stayed with him because he understood what it felt like to lose something important. He had gained wealth, influence, and respect, but somewhere along the way, he had lost the ability to simply connect with people. Lily noticed the silence after he stopped speaking. "You do that often," she said. Ethan looked surprised. "Do what?" "You carry things alone." For a moment, Ethan had no answer. Nobody spoke to him that way. Most people saw his confidence and assumed he never struggled. They saw the position he held, but never considered the pressure behind it. Lily did not see his reputation. She noticed his emotions. That was what made her different. As their friendship grew, Ethan discovered more about Lily's past. Before becoming known as the flower girl on the street, she had worked hard to create a stable life for herself. She refused to let other people's assumptions define her future. She learned new skills, built relationships, and continued helping others even when some people treated her unfairly. Ethan admired that strength. Not the kind of strength that came from power or status, but the kind that came from choosing kindness after facing difficulties. Meanwhile, Lily began seeing a different side of Ethan. The man who seemed impossible to reach slowly revealed moments of compassion hidden beneath his serious nature. She noticed how he remembered the names of employees. She noticed how carefully he considered every decision. She noticed that behind his controlled personality was someone who cared deeply but had forgotten how to show it. Yet neither of them ignored the reality of their different worlds. Ethan knew his responsibilities could bring complications into Lily's peaceful routine. Lily knew standing near someone like Ethan meant entering a life filled with uncertainty. Still, they continued moving forward one step at a time. Because for the first time in years, Ethan was not searching for control. He was searching for trust. And for the first time in years, Lily was not being seen as someone who needed help. She was being seen as someone whose presence had the power to change another person's life. The morning after Ethan Walker made the decision to trust Lily Carter, the world around him began moving faster than he expected. For years, Ethan had built a life where every detail was controlled. Every conversation had a purpose. Every relationship had boundaries. But now, the one person who had entered his life without asking for anything was the person he found himself wanting to protect. Not because she was helpless, but because he understood how rare her honesty was. However, Ethan also knew that his world carried complications that could not simply disappear. The concerns inside his organization had grown stronger. People who once spoke openly had become careful with their words. Meetings that should have been simple felt different. Ethan noticed the changes, but this time he did not keep everything to himself. He remembered Lily's words. Listen to what people do not say. So, he paid attention. He watched the pauses before answers. He noticed the hesitation behind confident voices. He recognized the small details that revealed uncertainty. And slowly, he began uncovering a truth he had feared for some time. Someone close to him had been hiding information. The discovery did not make Ethan angry. Instead, it made him thoughtful. In the past, he would have immediately closed every door and trusted no one. But Lily had shown him another way. Understanding came before judgment. That evening, Ethan visited Lily at her flower stand. The city was covered in soft evening light, and the familiar sound of traffic surrounded them. Lily immediately noticed the change in his footsteps. Something happened, she said. Ethan looked at her with surprise. How did you know? Lily smiled gently. Because you are walking like someone carrying a decision. Ethan looked down for a moment. He realized she had once again noticed something everyone else missed. He told her that he was facing difficult choices and that he was unsure who he could trust. Lily listened quietly before answering. Sometimes people show you who they are through what they protect. Ethan thought about that carefully. He had spent years studying people through their actions, but Lily viewed the world through a different kind of understanding. She looked beyond appearances. She looked at intentions. Later that night, Ethan made a choice that surprised even himself. Instead of sending Lily away from the situation, he asked for her perspective. He explained that he valued her judgment and trusted her ability to notice things others overlooked. Lily was hesitant. She did not want her life to become complicated because of his world. I am just someone who sells flowers, she said. Ethan shook his head. No. You are someone who saw the truth when everyone else missed it. Those words stayed with Lily. For so long, people had defined her by what they thought she could not do. But Ethan was beginning to see what she had always known about herself. Her value was never determined by what the world noticed first. As the days passed, Ethan and Lily continued to grow closer through trust and understanding. Yet both knew that a difficult moment was approaching. The secrets surrounding Ethan's world were slowly coming to the surface, and soon they would have to face a challenge that would test everything they had built. But this time, Ethan was not facing it alone. The man who once believed strength meant standing apart had finally discovered that true strength could also come from allowing someone to stand beside him. The truth that Ethan Walker had been searching for was finally beginning to appear, but it was not the answer he expected. For years, Ethan believed that the greatest danger came from people outside his circle. He believed strangers were the ones who needed to be watched, and that distance was the only way to stay protected. But now he understood something much more difficult. Sometimes the people closest to you were the ones who hid the most. As Ethan carefully examined the information in front of him, he noticed a pattern. Certain decisions had been influenced by someone who understood his routines and knew how his organization worked. It was not a random misunderstanding. It was a reminder that trust had to be earned through actions, not words. Throughout his life, Ethan had always relied on his own judgment. But this time, he also remembered Lily Carter. She had taught him that listening could reveal things that control could never find. Meanwhile, Lily continued her simple routine at the flower stand. She had no idea how much her presence had changed Ethan's perspective. To her, she was only doing what she had always done. She listened.
She cared.
She treated people like they mattered. But Ethan saw something different. He saw a person who had faced countless assumptions and still chose compassion over bitterness. One evening, Ethan returned to the flower stand with a serious expression. Lily immediately noticed the silence in his voice. "You found something," she said. Ethan nodded. "I found out that I was wrong about someone." Lily carefully placed a flower into a customer's bag before asking, "Does knowing the truth make things easier?" Ethan thought for a moment.
No.
"But it makes the next decision clearer." Lily smiled softly. "Then maybe that is enough." Her answer reminded him that not every problem required a perfect solution. Sometimes the most important thing was choosing the right path when things became difficult. Ethan decided that he would not allow fear or suspicion to control every choice he made. Instead, he would face the situation with patience and honesty. He also made sure Lily understood that she was not responsible for his problems. She did not need to carry the weight of his world. But Lily surprised him with her response. "I am not carrying your world, Ethan. I am just reminding you that you do not have to carry everything alone." Those words reached deeper than she realized. Ethan had spent years believing that being strong meant never depending on anyone. Lily showed him that strength could also mean accepting support from someone who truly cared. As the days passed, the situation around Ethan slowly became clearer. The people who had hidden information were finally revealed through their own choices. There was no need for dramatic displays or unnecessary conflict. The truth simply stood on its own. And when Ethan finally understood everything, he realized the greatest change was not what happened around him. It was what happened inside him. The man who once measured people by their usefulness had learned to recognize their humanity. The woman who had been overlooked by strangers had become the person he trusted most. Together, they stood at the beginning of a new chapter, knowing that challenges would still come, but also knowing they would face them with understanding instead of fear. Months after the truth was revealed, Ethan Walker's life looked different from the outside. The city still recognized him as a powerful man with influence, confidence, and a reputation built over many years. People still watched his decisions carefully and wondered what kind of person existed behind the calm expression they always saw. But those closest to him noticed something had changed. Ethan was no longer the man who believed every burden had to be carried alone. He had learned that trust was not a weakness. It was a choice. And the person who helped him understand that was Lily Carter. Lily continued selling flowers on the same Manhattan street where their story began. The small flower stand remained a simple part of her life, but everything around her felt different now. People who once walked past without noticing her began stopping to speak with her. They began recognizing her kindness, her intelligence, and the quiet confidence she carried every day. Ethan never tried to change who Lily was. He never saw her as someone who needed to be rescued. Instead, he respected the strength that had always been inside her. One afternoon, Ethan visited her flower stand as the sun moved lower across the city skyline.
The
familiar sound of footsteps made Lily smile before he even spoke. "You are here earlier than usual," she said. Ethan smiled slightly. "You knew it was me?" Lily touched one of the flowers in front of her. "I know the sound of people who have changed." Ethan stood quietly for a moment. Those words meant more than she realized, because he knew she was right. The man who once believed power was the only protection had discovered something far more valuable. He had discovered connection. He had discovered compassion. He had discovered that a person's true worth was never measured by their position, wealth, or the opinions of others. Ethan looked at Lily and remembered the first time she stopped him. At that moment, he thought she was someone who needed help. Now he understood the truth. She was the person who helped him see a world he had ignored for years. Lily had never needed someone to give her value. She had always possessed it. She only needed someone willing to recognize it. Their lives remained different in many ways. Ethan still carried responsibilities that came with his position. Lily still enjoyed the peaceful routine of arranging flowers and connecting with people in her neighborhood. But the distance between their worlds no longer felt impossible. They had built something based on respect, understanding, and honesty. One evening, Ethan walked with Lily through the city streets. The lights reflected on the buildings around them, and the sounds of Manhattan filled the night. For once, Ethan was not thinking about plans, risks, or responsibilities. He was simply present. Lily listened to the city around her and smiled. "The world sounds different when people finally pay attention," she said. Ethan looked ahead and understood exactly what she meant. He had spent years searching for control, but the most important lesson of his life came from someone the world had underestimated. A woman who could not see with her eyes had shown him how to see with his heart. And that day, Ethan Walker finally understood that true vision was never about what someone could see. It was about what someone was willing to understand.